is it possible as we move into the future to do these things without these apps? Is it possible to have a career without LinkedIn? The general sense right now is if you're not on LinkedIn, you don't exist to a company. Is it possible to date without dating apps anymore? And I think these are the questions that, like, when I'm on TikTok every once in a while, I see a lot of people on younger people on podcasts, like, lamenting these things and asking these questions. And I'm kind of curious, like, let's say we talked about the technical side. Now let's talk about the non-technical side. If we put down the computer and put down the apps, where do we start?
Sure. So I think that the first thing, and I've kind of just wanted to say this whole time, is like, the biggest thing I say to people is, like, first of all, like, be kind to yourself. This is a lot more than our parents did. This is a lot more than, hey, even 10 years ago we were doing. It is work and it's unfortunate. But like, be kind to yourself, like, have that acknowledgement and that you're working hard. Don't, just acknowledge that, of just like, things have changed. It's not you. It's just a lot higher stakes. So to answer your question, dating most certainly can be done outside of apps. Okay, can we start? Like, that's honestly what I recommend again and again. Like, the recommendations I do out on the site and things like that are like, okay, if if you're going that route, then here are some things to know, etc. And I'm always happy to do that. But I also try to put a lot of stuff out there, as I've said in this in this podcast, is the things you can do to meet people are the same things we've been doing for ages and ages and ages. If it's safe, if you're vaccinated and safe, go outside, do things you want to do. Going out, going to places where you're going to meet people, and ideally in situations where you're doing something you enjoy, a concert, a class, things like that. That is one of the best ways to meet people. I will say this, I do not recommend like traveling, like going to like, oh, I'm going to be part of this like group on a tour or traveling, stuff like that. Don't do that. That's a really isolating thing. I've heard of people who are like, oh, I'm going to go like meet somebody out. Like, no, those movies are lying to you. Please don't do that. That's how the 90 Day Fiance, franchise got started. But it absolutely can. And I think actually one of the recommendations for like our generation and the generations for right now, like millennials and Gen Z, we are going to need to be a generation that knows actually how to pull back from the information overload. That is going to be our survival tool going forward, because you point to, this rise in mental illness, things like that. We were not meant to be linked into every awful thing that's going on in the world 24/7. We were not wired for that. And as we can see, it's coming with very serious consequences for us biologically. So I think going forward, like, that's, people are like, oh, I'm unplugging. It's not that. Like, we still like their tool. We just need to acknowledge their tool again. And in the ways that we can set those boundaries around taking a step back. But yeah, the big thing I can say to folks is like, absolutely, I don't recommend apps, to be honest. I get that Tinder has 57 million users on it. So, ooh, yay, 57 million people it could be matched with. But we know psychologically, human beings, if you have more than 6 things, like choices, you can't choose. So like, maybe
choice is bad. Yeah.
Don't do the 57 million. So keeping it to doing things in your area, stuff like that you enjoy, you're going to find people who also hopefully enjoy that thing, and it starts going from there. Like, yes, meet cutes are like, no, please don't put your heart on meet cutes. And I tell people all that, don't be like putting your heart on like the spark or whatever. Like, but putting yourself out there and pursuing things you want will really help you find people along the way.
Yeah. And I think a key point here is that if you're taking the easiest route, you're not going to actually grow as quickly. And one of the things that, if I look back at everything in my career, the memories that I have where I grew the most are the ones in which I put myself in situations that were difficult. And so the dating apps and all the time that I spent swiping and all the time I spent going out with people that weren't right for me, and like I wasn't right for them,
Mhm.
and it was just a total cluster. You could go on 5 or 6 of those dates and you don't really get much. You don't learn a lot. You don't grow a lot
No,
because
no.
you never put yourself in a situation where you're having to figure out what your hobbies are, or put yourself in a situation where you have to go like, oh, I actually thought I liked yoga and I maybe don't, or I thought I
Mhm.
liked this. Like there's so much more that you gain from putting yourself into these, um, putting yourself into situations of like, maybe you don't find someone that you'll date, but you actually find a hobby that like ignites your curiosity for the next 5 years, like even better, right? And so
Yeah.
there's, whereas like on a dating app, you either get a date or you feel like crap, and like there's not
Yep.
any other value there. And I think the same with job applications and job boards. It's like you get the job or you feel rejected. There's nothing else that
Mhm.
you get out of
No,
it.
between.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, no, I was going to say to your point, like, by the way, big factor here, people like people who are interesting.
Mm,
So I recognize capitalism has made us try to like monetize all our hobbies, but like, please go out and have a hobby. Please go out and learn something you want to do or that you like, or have projects or whatever, if you know, have capacity for that, because that's going to get you, that's going to once again help you both in finding people who want to date you, as well as helping you with the job. Like it's a weird thing that I've heard in interviews now, are like, oh, do you have any like fun hobbies, or what have you been doing during the pandemic? And I was like, well, besides surviving, trying to survive, like, oh, I've been doing X. You want to show you have a life and you are an interesting person. I cannot tell you how many people are not, like, I'm not going to say not that interesting, but are unable to communicate those passions or those things, because that's what people are really drawn to.
it's so true. And like, I'll just give a quick example in the job search arena.
Mhm.
Even if it's something that you don't do a ton, it's
Yep.
interesting, right? And so like
Yes.
in my first interview ever for a job, maybe it was back in college on campus, I went in, I had a broken thumb because I went on a skiing outing that weekend with a bunch of
Mhm.
people with my in my dorm. And I go to shake the guy's hand because, of course, I'm anxious and I don't remember my hand is broken. And he's like, "What happened to your hand?" And I go, "Oh, I went skiing this weekend." And he just proceeded to talk about skiing for 25 minutes. And I was like, "Yeah, I skied when I was 12 and I broke my thumb this weekend. Like, that's all I know." And like, but it was an interesting enough like back and forth where like he goes, "Oh, we should probably talk about like the job." And I was like, "Yeah," in the last 5 minutes. And I ended up getting that
Yep.
job. And like, these are the funny things that people overlook. It's like if you're in an interview
Yeah.
and they say, "Well, what do you got going on in your life?" And you say,
Right.
"I'm just applying for jobs. That's all I'm doing every day. And I'm
Yeah.
angry." It's like, cool, good for you, man.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Yeah.
if you have a project, I'm always encouraging people to have little side projects, not
Mhm.
just not to be an entrepreneur or anything, but just to like keep your sanity and have something to talk about. And like the same in
And
the
have something
dating
you
world.
can control. Like
Yeah.
that's a big part of it. Like
And could
having
you,
something that you know you like, it's on, not on you, but that you enjoy doing. Like that was like actually a wonderful thing with the pandemic for me, is like, you know, yes, I was getting frustrated. My job might take forever to do something, but knowing that at the end of the day, I had something I could control and be like, oh, I can just get this stuff done now. Like
mhm.
that can help with those feelings of everything else being out of control. Sorry to interrupt you. I
No, you're
apologize.
right on point. And because like imagine if you went on a date with someone and they said, "So what do you do in your like when you're
Yeah.
not on this date?" You're like, "I just
Mhm.
juggle other dates."
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
great conversation. Like this is going so well. And like
Yeah.
the same with the job search. It's like, "So what do you do when you're not talking to us about this job?"
Mhm.
"I talk to
Mhm.
other people about other jobs." Cool,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
what? Like
What?
give us I think that's the thing. It's like
Something.
and where I want to end on all this is like going back to that ego is the enemy piece.
Mhm.
Everything on the internet is telling you to build your ego, focus on
Yeah.
yourself, brand yourself, sell yourself, improve your profiles, improve the way you set like keywords and all that stuff. And there's
Mhm.
value in doing a lot of that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is people hiring people. And this is where the algorithms
Yep.
also go wrong because companies are
Yep.
getting crappy employees because
Yep.
they never get the emotional piece. They're filtering
Yeah.
people just on keywords and they're missing out. There's that article. They're missing out on great candidates because they're filtering out great candidates because they don't have the right keywords. And so if we
Yep.
can just again, use these things as tools and then improve our ability to handle the real world.
Yeah.
I think that that will help people, grow much quicker throughout their careers and in their love life.